It happened in my bedroom at the age of 10. I always had trouble sleeping and spent most nights tossing and turning. I was a horror film fanatic as a child, and being scared was something I didn't have much experience with. I was not afraid of the dark, nor was I easily swayed by strange sounds or odd encounters. I did, however, know when to haul ass out of a situation or to find a trusted adult. I always slept with my closet doors open, which will come to be of significance later in the story. I should also mention that my family home was in a heavily wooded area, in what some may refer to as the middle of nowhere. One night around 1 a.m., I awoke to the sound coming from underneath my bed. It sounded like one of my cats was scratching themselves with one of their feet, or doing something to cause a thumping beneath me. I had heard this same sound many times before, and its source had always been one of my cats. So this time, I didn't look. I closed my eyes and tried to resume my slumber. I turned over and onto my left side, which left me facing the wall against which my bed was pressed up. I heard the sound again, and thinking my kitty was directly beneath me, I said good night. I was able to fall asleep once again. The next time I awoke, it was to a surreal and shocking scene. The sheet and comforter of my bed were no longer covering me. I saw a man standing over my bed, poking me. He was poking me with his finger, and the way in which he did so was truly terrifying. It was not the way that a child would poke a friend. It was as if he was touching another human being for the first time, exploring the sensation of the tip of his index finger jabbing at flesh. What I saw was so unbelievable, so impossibly strange, that I believed I was dreaming. I tried desperately to awake from my nightmare, to no avail. The poking continued. He poked at my chest, my belly, my legs, and my arms. Paralyzed and scared shitless, I yelled, "Wake up!" And with this, the man threw himself to the floor and closed his eyes, as if he was trying to lead me to believe that he was asleep or dead. I have no idea. It was at this time I realized I could not have been dreaming. I somehow found the ability to move, and I jumped from the top of my bed, over the man lying on the floor next to me, and ran towards my parents' room. When I got to their bedroom door, something came over me. I told myself that this was all impossible, and that there was no way that a person could have entered our home without breaking in, as we had always kept every door and window locked at night. I had seen many strange things in my home, either falling asleep or waking up. By the third or fourth time, after speaking to my mom or dad about it, I knew that it was my mind playing tricks on me. I turned away from my parents' bedroom door and decided to hastily check the house for a break-in. What I found was that nothing was out of the ordinary. No broken windows or locks, no busted doors, nothing. I assured myself that I had to have been dreaming or hallucinating, and blamed my obsession with horror films for this. I made my way down the long, dark, and narrow hallway to my bedroom. I peeked inside and saw no one. I turned on the light, got down on the floor just outside the doorway, and looked under the bed. Nothing. I proceeded to check both of my windows for signs of a break-in, which were not present. Both windows were closed and locked. I knew it. I was totally seeing things, imagining things. I might have been dreaming. I crawled back into bed and decided to watch some TV in order to calm myself down and distract from thoughts of the scary as hell dream, hallucination, or whatever I had just had. I turned on the TV, flipped to a channel with a seemingly boring program. This always helped me get sleepy, and put the remote control on my bedside table. I was lying on my right, facing away from the wall that I had mentioned previously. As I laid there, my eyes began to adjust to the dark room, with the faint light from the TV screen. Just beyond the TV, I saw something that made my heart sink into the pit of my stomach. Inside my closet, with one of the doors now slightly closed, I saw the man standing perfectly still, facing the wall, hiding, waiting for me to fall asleep, I imagine. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I sat and stared at the man in my closet for what seemed like minutes, but was likely only a few seconds. I quickly got out of bed, hoping that the man wouldn't notice and that my dad could catch him hiding in the closet. I once again made my way to my parents' bedroom door, still remaining as quiet as I possibly could, and went inside. I shook my dad and my mom at the same time, and when they awoke, I said, "Shh, don't make a sound. There's someone in my closet." My parents both jumped up and said, "What?" I repeated myself and asked them to please call 911. My mom immediately picked up the phone. Neither of my parents doubted my claim, as I had always been honest and forthright. They both knew that there was no way that I was making this up or that I was mistaken. I'm sure that the look I must have had on my face made it clear that this was really happening. My dad told my mom and I that he was going to look and urged us to stay in their bedroom and lock the door. So we did. At this point, I was beyond scared. I didn't know what the man was capable of, whether he had a weapon or whether my dad was safe. I just stood in the room with my mom and cried. After what felt like hours, my dad knocked on the door and told me it was him and that it was okay to open the door. My mom unlocked the door and let my dad inside. I said something to the effect of, "Did you get him?" And my dad looked at me with the most unsettling and confused look imaginable. He said, "There's no one there." I assured him that there was indeed a man in my room and that he had been poking me. My dad said that he had just checked every inch of the house and found no one. He had also checked the doors and windows, just as I had done. Then it hit me. He must have had a key. As soon as I said this, my parents looked at each other in absolute terror. Our nearest neighbor, a trusted and beloved friend whom we'd considered family, was in possession of a key to our house. As she had regularly babysat me since I was a toddler, she was the only person outside of my immediate family with a key to our home. Soon after this revelation, the police arrived, took statements, checked around our property, and then left. None of us got any sleep that night. The next day, my dad went to my neighbor's house and asked if she knew where her key to our house was. She said yes, and when she went to show him, she saw that it was missing. Her home had no signs of a break-in, and she had always kept her doors and windows locked, or so she says. My parents had all of the locks in our doors changed and opted to never again give a key to anyone, except in the wake of an emergency. I never discovered the identity of the man that lurked in my bedroom that night. The event left me traumatized, and it took a very long time for me to accept what had happened and move on. My sleeping trouble turned into full-on insomnia, and for about a decade I was unable to sleep without a light on. It has been 20 years since that night, and apart from my parents, I have never told a soul about it until now. I have actually found writing this to be very cathartic. My heart goes out to anyone who has suffered a trauma in their lives, and I hope that you are all able to find peace within yourselves. I recently started school again, and as a part of my daily routine, I am required to travel to Toronto Monday through Friday via the train and subway lines. It's about a good 2 hours one way, so I usually pull out a good book, pop in my headphones, and relax to some light music. I, of course, being from out of town, have heard a lot of horror stories that many people have endured on the subway. Naturally, I thought most of it was just over-exaggeration and tall tales. Well, I was very quickly proven dead wrong. Rewind to about a week ago. I had just finished a very long, grueling day of school, starting at 5 a.m. and ending at 7 p.m., and I wanted nothing more than to just relax and get home as soon as possible. I took my usual bus route to the subway station and sat down on one of the seats directly next to an exit door. Now, a little context. I am facing forwards, looking at one seat ahead of me, across the aisle of the subway car. This seat was occupied by a 20-something-year-old Asian woman who was playing some game on her phone and was paying absolutely no attention to anything going on around her. Next to this seat opposite me is another seat facing this Asian lady, and it is this person in this seat that made my 40-minute subway ride very disturbing. Occupying the seat was a lady, about 30 to 40 years of age, who possessed a very creepy smile. I say this because she never stopped smiling, and I mean she was smiling the entire subway ride. Anyway, the car pulled out of the station and we were on our way. For the first half of my trip, she would continuously be staring at this Asian lady next to her, laughing and muttering to herself. She would also take her phone out of her purse and start taking pictures of this girl and whatever was on her phone. How the Asian lady did not see this, I have no clue. About halfway up the tracks, the Asian lady left the car, and this is where the attention was directed to me. She turned to face me and just smiled at me with a huge, toothy grin. I just stared at a poster on the roof of the train for what felt like hours. Eventually, she got the hint that I was avoiding her gaze like the plague and went to plan B. She opened up her purse and removed a tube of toothpaste. Colgate was written on the side, and proceeded to ingest roughly half the tube. I damn near threw up then and there, but somehow held it together, even though she was still staring at me and laughing at me covered in toothpaste. My stop came, and I bolted from that car as fast as I could. I got to the escalator and hazarded a glance back, and guess who I see fast walking after me, arms held still at her side, still smiling. I was understandably extremely terrified by this point. I ran out of that station right to the bus just as it was pulling out of the station. I took one final look back, and there she was, standing on the platform, head cocked to the side, laughing and waving goodbye to me. This happened to me last month. I'm a 22-year-old girl living away from home for college, but at the time, I was staying at my mom's house while she was out of town, about 3 hours away. I was with my college roommate, also 22 years old, and we were carless during our stay. We were using rides from friends and Ubers to get around our hometown. One night, we took an Uber about 20 minutes to hang out downtown with some friends. We ended up back at our friend's apartment, drank like fish, and summoned an Uber to come pick us up. By the time our Uber arrived to take us home, my girlfriend and I were blackout drunk. We don't remember our Uber driver at all, but my roommate does know we slept almost the whole ride home. Next thing I know, I wake up to 2 police officers in my mom's living room, pointing flashlights at our faces as we are piled on top of each other sleeping on the couch. We slowly come into consciousness as they ask us for our IDs, if we've been drinking, and make sure that we have the right to be at my mom's house. After they see that we are of legal age to be intoxicated and that I am a resident of the house, they let us know that the alarm company sent them out to the house because someone set off the alarm. They asked us if anyone else was in the house, and we said no. They scolded us for leaving my front door unlocked and kind of open. I offered them a drink and they declined and laughed it off on their way out. The next morning, in a more sober state, my roommate and I joked about how stupid we were to be so drunk that we set my house alarm off, had the cops called to the house, and didn't even hear them as they knocked and rang the doorbell before entering. The way my house alarm works, you set it right before you leave. and as soon as you walk back in the house, it beeps constantly for an entire minute. If you fail to type in the code in that minute to set it off, it starts blaring at you, and that's when you know the security company is being notified. The security company will then call the phone number linked with the house alarm, and you are supposed to give them your personal code word to let them know it's a false alarm. If you fail to give the correct code word, the cops are automatically and immediately sent. Normally, the company would call my mom's cell phone, but she was out of the country without a working phone. The next number on the list is my dad's, but he moved out 5 years ago and no longer knows the correct passcode. I forgot about all of this in my drunken state. It wasn't until later that afternoon I get a phone call from my dad. He already knew the cops had been sent to the house because he got the call from the security company but couldn't give them the passcode. He figured I had set it off accidentally, which isn't too uncommon, but I didn't have the phone number of the security company to let them know it was a false alarm, and my phone number isn't linked to our house alarm. I told him what happened the night before and that I was pretty puzzled that we could have come home without setting the alarm off. It's extremely loud. It didn't make sense that I would have just walked in the front door and ignored it and then just went straight to the couch and fell asleep as it's blaring throughout the house. All my dad cared about was that he was woken up at 2:30 in the morning to those phone calls. He was annoyed. Suddenly, something hit me. I asked him exactly what time the security company called him. He checked his call log, and the first call came in at 2:24 a.m. I suddenly got chills down my spine. This meant the alarm was set off 2 minutes prior. I checked my Uber account on my phone, where you can see the exact time you were picked up and the exact duration of the ride. I had been picked up an hour before he got a call from the security company. The duration of the ride was 26 minutes. By doing the math, I realized we were back at my mom's house at least 20 minutes before my alarm was set off. Just enough time to go inside, set the alarm off, set it on again, and then make our way to the couch and fall asleep. 20 minutes after we got back to my house, someone tried to get into my house and must have been scared away by the alarm. My mom's house is in a gated community, so it's not easy for just anybody to get in. The Uber driver could have dropped 2 wasted girls off, circled the block, maybe even crept around to the back of my house where he would have seen the 2 of us pass out on top of each other on the couch, right in front of the sliding glass door with no curtains or blinds blocking the view. It's surprising that we didn't wake up to the alarm going off, but we also didn't wake up to the cops banging on the door or entering the house. We were in an alcohol coma and probably could have slept through anything. Though nothing happened to us that night, it terrifies me what could have if I didn't remember to set the alarm on that night. I thought as long as I had a safe ride home, I could drink without consequence. I learned a very valuable lesson that night. Somebody was trying to get into my house. Thank God for security companies. Some backstory. This was years ago. I was around 12 or 13. I grew up in a small town, technically a village, about an hour and a half away from a big city in the US. On summer days, my best friend and I would venture around our woodsy neighborhood and do typical kid things. My friend's name was Sarah, my little sister's name was Sammy, and her little sister's name was Alex. We would occasionally let them tag along on our adventures, especially if our parents made us. Our favorite thing to do was walk to our other neighbor's house, we'll call them the Smiths, and use their trampoline. It was in our neighborhood, but the houses are pretty spread out with dense forest in between. We'd set off towards their place, and it was about a 20 to 30 minute walk, longer on the way back because we had to go uphill. One day, Sarah and I decided to let Sammy and Alex come to the trampoline with us. They weren't really allowed very far from our houses without an adult or us with them. We played on it for an hour or two and decided we were thirsty or hungry, one of the two, and decided to head back to Sarah and Alex's house for snacks. We were almost back to their house, but the last stretch before their house was the longest amount of isolated road, with a creek following by and no houses lining the road, just dense forest. As soon as we cleared this area, we would be right on top of their house. As we were almost through the wooded part, and we could see their house up ahead, a woman with short black hair and sunglasses was walking by with her baby in a stroller. She was walking towards us and would pass us soon. I didn't recognize her as someone who lived in our neighborhood, and I knew everyone. But lots of people from surrounding neighbors take walks here because of the woods. She passes by us normally, but right after she does, she says, "Oh, hey, kids, I'm a little lost. What road is this?" None of us were very alarmed. She was a lady with a baby, not some scary, creepy man. We told her the name of the road, and she told us she was really lost and needed to get home to take care of her baby. She then asked if we could escort her to her house because she didn't think she'd be able to find it, even with the directions. Sarah agreed to help her, but I felt really uncomfortable and was told never to talk to strangers, even if they're women. I told the lady none of us could help because Sarah's dad was expecting us home soon. Sarah gave me a weird look, but I think she caught on because she then said, "Oh yeah, we can't actually help, sorry." At this point, I wasn't really freaked. I just knew I shouldn't be helping strangers to their house. I went to step in front of the younger two. They were trailing behind us and I wanted to push them forward so we could start walking away. I stepped closer to the lady in my efforts and could then look into her stroller. That is when my heart sank. The baby was fake. It was a baby doll. It was all wrapped in blankets, but I could see that it was plastic. At that point, I didn't know what to do, and I just found myself screaming, "Run!" I made sure Sammy and Alex were ahead of me and we sprinted for their house. Her dad was working in the garage on something and we ran in out of breath and crying. I quickly just said there was a lady trying to get us to go home with her who had a fake baby. He grabbed a golf club from his caddy that was lying out and told us to get in the house. We all went in and a few minutes later he came back. He said he was heading towards the lady when she spotted him. She was already on the phone with somebody. Out of nowhere, a white van apparently screeched up and she threw the stroller in, jumped in, and they sped off. It was definitely a creepy experience, and I don't know what that lady's intentions were, but I felt like they were not innocent. This truly scared us. We didn't wander around the neighborhood nearly as much, and when we did, we were always looking out for something.